Welcome to Personal Statement Workshops for Freshmen. Today we'll go over some of the prompts that may be common for you as a freshman applicant and some suggestions for how to address those prompts. So, the key thing to remember is that colleges want to know about you. So, it's important that as you're writing, you focus on your own story and experiences, especially the ones that shape who you are. You don't need to emphasize information that might already be in your transcripts, or if you have a resume in some of your applications or test scores, you don't need to emphasize that information. This is the unique place where you can talk about who you are. That's not, there's no other place in your application for you to input that information. So, what are some of the goals for telling them about who you are? Find a real story or two that illustrates your strengths and character. And you want to have a story that really shows what's important to you. What are your values? And how does it potentially connect to your current goals? Or how does who you are help you connect to the wider world? Now, good stories are true stories. I hate to say it, but some students have just made some up. And I would say 80% of the time when they've told me that, I had already started to suspect that just by reading it. Authentic stories ring true. So you don't need to exaggerate. There will be some stories from your life that are worth telling. So don't be harsh on yourself. Say, "Oh, I've just lived a boring life. I have nothing to say." That really is not true. Good stories are those that reveal who you are now and insightfully share about it. So a good story also highlights some unique qualities. Even if you think, how do I stand out? There will be something about who you are that makes you different from everybody else. Um, a good story will allow the reader to visualize what were those important events or accomplishments from your life, like telling it in a way that allows the reader to really see what happened. You might have questions about, well, how personal should my personal statement be? Well, I would say generally you want to choose topics that you're comfortable sharing with a stranger, because indeed it is a stranger that will be reading your essay. You want to emphasize the things that demonstrate how you've grown in self-awareness. And especially if it's an uncomfortable story or event that you're sharing, you don't have to give all the, gritty details about what happened, but you can focus more on the result of that experience. Like, how did it help you to change? And how did it shape who you are? And in that regard, even small experiences or events can illustrate a more complex understanding of yourself or how you fit into the larger world. So here are like the three main areas in the UW Seattle's freshman app where you can give written responses. Two of them are mandatory and one is optional. So the first one is the personal essay prompt, and that is where they want a story from your life that reveals your character or help to shape your character. The short response part describes how you might add to the diversity of the University of Washington. We'll talk more about that in detail. And the last part is optional. And that optional part is where you could give additional information about yourself or maybe some adverse circumstances that has happened in your life, which could include the impact of COVID, but you want them to be considered in your admission because maybe it explains some difficulty or some disadvantages in your application. There is details in the UW about what things to include or not include if it's about COVID's impact. So the coalition and common apps, if you're not applying to UW, you're just applying to other schools, those prompts are more varied and actually they can help promote maybe more ideas for writing. But most of the coalition common app prompts can be adapted for use for the UW prompts. And I'll kind of have a slide that shows which prompts from the coalition and common app might work well with the particular ones in UW's. So, yeah, it would be ideal if you know you're applying to multiple schools, you want to choose a writing prompt that will work for all the schools, ideally. You might have to adapt a little bit, but that's okay. One word of caution. So this is what I found from the UW's website. Even though UW Seattle requires you to establish a coalition account and profile, the essay if you write an essay and you upload it to your coalition account, the UW Seattle cannot retrieve it. So they specifically say you must submit your essay and short response within the UW application questions. They are not able to retrieve your essays from the coalition essay section of your profile. So if you only submit your essays through the coalition essay section of your profile, they will not receive it and your application to the UW will be incomplete. This is a big issue. So make sure that even if you have submitted an essay into the coalition account for other schools, you're going to need to copy that essay and paste it into your UW application. Ideally, you should modify it to make sure it fits the UW prompts and then upload it to the UW application section. So the UW's personal essay prompt says this: tell a story from your life describing an experience that either demonstrates your character or helped to shape it. There's a maximum of 650 words, but the UW says their best essays are usually only 3 to 400 words. So here are some of the coalition and common app prompts that would fit well with the UW personal essay prompt. So the ones that say the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. Now, this is the part you need to focus on to make it fit the UW prompt. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So hopefully the learning that you received also demonstrates, a character trait or shaped a character trait that you now have. The other ones are reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? So this might fit with the UW prompt because then maybe gratitude is the character trait you're emphasizing. So then again, you need to show how that experience really shaped that character. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. So, again, in that where you show the personal growth can be a way where you can demonstrate a development of a character trait within yourself. So I bolded and made bigger the parts of the prompts from the coalition and common apps that you need to focus on to make it fit or be adapted to the UW prompt. So here is a slide with a number of traits that you could, start brainstorming with. And it's not an exhaustive list, but it's just a place to start. So if you start with the character trait that you want to talk about or share with the application officer or the admissions officer, then you can start thinking through your life like events or what things happened in my life that really contributed to me being the way that I am now. And then they don't have to be earth shattering experiences. They could even be small experiences, but it's how you describe the experience and how the insights that you have from that experience to who you are today is going to be what really makes that story work. Here is a link to a worksheet that can help you identify some character traits and values and really walk you through this process of coming up with a story that will illustrate it. It's a great resource. So here I'm going to give you some examples. Um, and I'm going to give you both the less effective telling way and the more effective showing way. So here is might be a positive experience that you've had in your past that shaped who you are. So this is the less effective telling way. I was very inspired when I heard a speaker share about how she was saved from human trafficking. I was shocked and outraged and care about social justice for young girls being exploited and abused. The speaker's story had a happy ending because of the organization that helped her, and things are very different now in her city. Because of this experience, my goal is to become a lawyer to fight against injustice both here and around the world. So this version is not as effective because it doesn't show how this story really impacted the writer. So what is convincing that this reader or that this writer really cares about social justice? How do you know that about her? Um, the speaker story had a happy ending because the organization helped her. Yeah, that might be good to some more details there would make this story much more interesting. But there's not much connection between how this event or this experience really demonstrates that this person cares about social justice and especially about the types of exploitation that happened to this woman that she heard her story about. Here's a more showing way that will have more detail and it really paints a more compelling picture about why the writer cares about making a difference in the world. I had an opportunity to hear a young woman named Anya courageously share her story as a survivor of childhood sex trafficking in the Philippines. When I hear such personal stories of injustice against the vulnerable due to poverty and gender, I am enraged, yet feel powerless to make a difference in the face of endemic corruption and greed. However, through Anya's story, I was inspired by the little known work of International Justice Mission, who rescued her from the brothel. They offered her aftercare to heal from the trauma and then supported her to testify against her perpetrators. I was inspired by the courage it took for her to testify in a judicial system that historically only worked for the wealthy or powerful, not people like her. Because of Anya's testimony and others like hers, brothel owners have been convicted and jailed, and child sex trafficking has been reduced by 80% in her city. Hearing Anya's real story challenged my cynical assumptions that evil always wins. It gives me hope that persistent and competent people with a clear vision can use their skills in law, counseling, or criminal justice to make a real difference. While I'm not yet sure which major to apply to, my goal is to pursue studies that will allow me to someday help protect society's most vulnerable from exploitation. So in this version, the showing version, a lot more details and the use of language that has more of an emotional impact and it connects how the story impacted the writer and shapes what she wants to do for her future. Now, if you want to share about a challenging life experience from your life, there's one thing that you should be cautious about in that you want to match the details of that challenging life experience to the importance of the story's effect on your life. So you want to be descriptive, but you don't want to be melodramatic. So if the experience has shaped who you are or your goals, those are the ones where it's more effective to give more specific description, and then make sure you show its impact on your life. So, in this example, it's where telling may be more effective because the impact on your life may be limited. So, let's say you got sick during one of your one of your quarters of school. I got sick with pneumonia, and as a result, I had to miss, I had to drop a class or something like that. So that might just be all that's needed to talk about that challenging event. What you wouldn't want to do is to go into all kinds of melodramatic detail to tell that. Like, if you said something like, I tried to lie still, but shivers racked my body. By 3 a.m., all the bed sheets were soaked with sweat, and I struggled to breathe. Because of the pneumonia, I had to miss my midterm exam and drop my class, blah, blah, blah. So, this is an instance where, you know, painting that picture of how sick you were may not be exactly what's forwarding your goals. Here's another personal essay where it would be more effective to have more detail. So I'll start with the telling less effective version. I once volunteered at a food bank. I thought I would have little in common with the homeless who went there for help, but later found out I shouldn't judge too fast and that we can share common experiences and values. I've learned a lot about how hard it is to experience homelessness. Getting to know a homeless woman my own age there motivates me to want to study social work or urban planning. So in here, this example, there's a lot of claims about, learning about something, um, claims about working with a particular population in our community, but it's not very effective in really showing how this experience changed them or how they connect to the broader community. So here's a more effective showing example. I volunteered at a food bank that served people experiencing homelessness as part of my school's community service hours. I was a bit judgmental at first. I assumed people became homeless because they were addicted to drugs or alcohol until I met Malia, a young woman about my age who used to live in Chicago till her grandmother became ill. To take care of her grandmother, Malia and her mom sold most of their belongings and moved back to Seattle. After her grandma passed away and paying for medical bills and the funeral, they ended up living in their car, which has made it very hard for her mom to find a new job and for her to finish high school. Learning about her daily challenges and meeting simple needs for hygiene while living out of a car opened my eyes to the toll homelessness takes on human dignity. Though I have not personally experienced homelessness, my family has moved often due to rent increases and now live with extended family to share childcare and reduce costs. Getting to know Malia has made me realize that though our circumstances are different, housing insecurity and caring for extended family are challenges we share because of our common family values. I now want to explore majors in social justice or urban planning to address sustainable solutions for housing insecurity. So this one demonstrates a character of like growth where this writer used to maybe have an incorrect view or a stereotyped view of all people experiencing homelessness, and it kind of walks you through to how she became more aware of the varieties of circumstances that can result in homelessness and how she can actually have some commonality with others. And yeah, it just shows a lot more insights that she's had into the lives of other people. And this demonstrates that she has both empathy and the ability to grow from previous misconceptions. So the UW short response essay has the prompt that says, describe the world you come from and how you, as a product of it, might add to the diversity of the UW. This prompt has a maximum 300 word limit. So keep that in mind. It is pretty short. According to the University of Washington, they say that our families and communities often define us and our individual worlds. Community might refer to your cultural group, extended family, religious group, neighborhood or school, sports team or club, coworkers, etc. So they allow for a very broad definition of culture and community. So that allows you to have a lot more things to draw from as you respond to that uh, the short prompt, the short response prompt. So here are some of the similar coalition and common app prompts that could also fit or work with the university prompt. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking and what was the outcome? Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Has there been a time when you've had a long cherished or accepted belief challenged? How did you respond? How did the challenge affect your beliefs? So think about how you might be able to adapt any of these other essays that you might be using for other schools to the one from the University of Washington. But these kind of have common elements. So here's an example. Here is again the more telling, less effective way. I come from a Korean family where honoring our elders is an expectation of the culture. 3 years ago, my grandmother, Halmoni, had a stroke and can no longer live independently. She took care of us when we were little, but now it's our turn to take care of her at home because being at a skilled nursing facility would be too hard on her and our family. I had a hard time giving up my freedom in the beginning, but now my attitude has changed and I have grown in responsibility. After a year, I have gotten used to taking care of Harmony, and my social life has improved because of her cheerful personality. I've learned that some cultural expectations from Asian culture can actually be very positive, and I hope to share that with others. So, this example has some of the basic details. It shares what happened, but it doesn't always give you the information of like how this person transitioned from um, where they were being more the child that's being taken care of to now someone who carries some adult responsibilities in her family. And it just doesn't have a lot of the descriptions that engage you in the story. Here is a more effective showing way to share the same story. Of course, we are taking grandma home. You should be ashamed to even think of sending her away, was mom's response to my seemingly innocent question. 3 years ago, my grandmother, Halmoni in Korean, had a stroke and now needs help with walking and daily tasks. Lying on the hospital bed, she looked frail and small, and the need for me to accept adult responsibilities suddenly loomed large. From the time I was in preschool, Halmoni lived with us. She sometimes yelled and hit me when I was naughty, but I always knew I was the apple of her eye. She would purposefully hide Korean snacks where I could accidentally find them because she knew a stolen treat is more savored. Now, instead of Halmoni cooking my favorite meals, it's my turn to spoon feed her and help with life's daily tasks. My parents said it would be shameful to abandon her to a place where she can't understand the language and wouldn't like the food. Sometimes I can't go out with friends, but taking care of Halmoni has now become woven into the normal rhythm of our family's activities. Her outgoing and spunky personality, which shines past language barriers and physical limitations, has made our house a welcoming hangout for my closest friends. Caring for harmony is now my honest expression of honor instead of filial obligations. Growing up in the US, I didn't want to be stifled by Asian cultural expectations, but caring for harmony has helped me appreciate her true worth. Beyond just frustration when cultural expectations differ, I am beginning to better appreciate and truly embrace my family's Korean values. So hopefully this example shows how using specific details, more emotional choices of words can really create a story that has more impact, draws the readers in, and then the ending also really connects the reason why the story is being told. It kind of connects the insights about how this person has grown to appreciate the differences in her cultural origins and yeah, her appreciation of them, even though she grew up in a different culture here in the U.S. Let's now talk a little bit about form and style. So, the things to really remember is to start with some kind of appeal to emotions through an effective hook. And that will hopefully keep your readers wanting to continue reading your story. You want to tell an effective story that is also insightful. It shows how you have insight to both who you are and how you fit into the world. You want to be avoiding obvious statements and flattery. We'll have some examples about that. You don't want to use cliches that are meant to inspire but end up just sounding kind of cheesy. Um, and it is important to stay within the word limit because those admissions officers reading your essays have lots to read. So an overly long essay will not endear them to you. A good story, okay, a good story has personal details that show the significance of your story rather than having a lot of telling statements that don't have a lot of supported details. So telling statements make the readers ask questions like, "Well, how do I know that's true?" Or why did this happen?" So answering those how and why questions is going to always give you a more effective essay. Specific details to provide credibility and interest. So that's why you want to give more specifics. Um, they help your story sound authentic, and it does help with reader interest. You want to choose your words for their emotional impact. So, yeah, think about that as you proofread and redo your drafts. Think about how you can make word choices that will have more emotional punch. And the key thing is sharing the insights that you have about yourself and your place in the world. That's how you're going to tie up your story. The story is not just about the events. The story really is meant to illustrate something about you or how you understand the world. So what is an effective hook? What might that look like? So here's an example from the University of Washington that they found from their applicants that they thought was one of the very best. So this is what it was. As I look back, my lack of action seemed disgraceful or seems disgraceful, but at the time I was simply trying to survive. So I've kind of color coded parts of the prompt. So what makes this a very or parts of this hook. What makes it really effective is these bold use of words. Words like disgraceful and survive have a lot of emotional impact. So they make it they make it effective, makes the reader want to know more. Um, the phrase "as I look back" shows self-reflection, and words like "my lack of action" or I was simply trying to survive. This also creates a lot of curiosity. It's like, well, what didn't you do? And what what was necessary for survival? What was the situation? So here's another link to, I think, the UW's, I think this is from the University of Washington talking about effective hooks. So here are some beginnings to avoid, and these are actually very similar to ones that I've seen in a number of personal essays. Things like, allow me to introduce myself, or my name is. So these would be examples of where you're stating the obvious and you're being redundant because they'll have your name from other parts of the application. If you start with to whom it may concern, that's actually more appropriate for a letter or an email, but not a personal statement. I would like to thank the admissions committee for considering my application. This is kind of stating the obvious because they know you're applying, but also personal thanks are not needed because the person reading your essay is just doing their job. They don't know you personally, so you don't need the kind of personal thanks. In some cultures, it might seem rude to not include something like that, but in US culture, it's not necessary. Um, any types of beginnings that say, like, in response to question number one, or in response to the prompt, or the 3 reasons why I'm a good candidate for the University of Washington is, these are kind of like phrases that announce what you're doing in your writing. And it's just not very sophisticated writing. And it makes it sound very much like a formula. So instead of an essay. So that is not preferred. You want to avoid flattery and mentioning of the ranks of the ranking of of the school you're applying to. So generally, my rule of thumb is don't tell the school things they already know about themselves. Like, they generally know whether they're a strong school or not, and in which areas they're strong. Like, they probably are very aware of their rankings already, so you don't need to tell them that. Um, Statements like, I want to attend the University of Washington because it's one of the top 5 universities for business or engineering or nursing. Um, the any of my students that write things like this, it's because they're trying to say something positive to the school. And again, it's like complimentary statements is not necessary in US culture and is actually negative because it comes across as either being insincere or an overemphasis on social status. Neither of those things would reflect well on you. Effective endings. So the way you want to end your essays is to make sure you're connecting the event to the significance of it in your life. Like, if it was a life defining moment that you're describing, specifically explain how it shaped who you are today. You want to summarize how the key events that you might have described really influences your worldview today, how you see the world or how you fit into the world today. Here are some endings to avoid. It is my sincere hope that you will grant me the opportunity to attend your prestigious school. So again, this states the obvious and it sounds like flattery. It's even though any student that writes this, their intention is to be polite, it just doesn't work in the US culture. My life experience has taught me that if you work hard and never give up, you will make your dream come true. Statements like this tend to be oversimplistic. It sounds positive, which would be the main reason why a student would use this. But the problem is it can also sound like a cliche. So a cliche is like just some little saying that is meant to inspire, but it ends up being a problem because it's often not completely true, or it makes it sound like you have an overly optimistic view of the world and you don't really have a good grasp of reality. The sad truth is sometimes people work as hard as they can, but their dreams do not come true. However, the opposite is also true. I mean, the other side is, well, if you don't work hard, it's pretty sure that your dreams won't come true. So, lots of students want to emphasize how hardworking they are, but really, for a college that you're applying to, they would assume that if you're not hardworking, you're probably not a good candidate for their school. So, this kind of a minimum thing, I think. So, it's not always that effective to emphasize how hard you work unless you have like a really specific story that demonstrates how you went way over and above, and then what were the things you learned from that, or what were the positive results from that. In terms of your writing process, make sure you're writing and writing again. So start early so that you have plenty of time to um, revise and adapt your drafts for different schools. I would strongly discourage cutting and pasting one essay into all your different applications, especially if you mention the name of the school anywhere in your essay. Make sure you change the name of the school for every application. Um, but ideally, you want to tailor each essay. Even if you start with essentially the same essay, you might want to change some sentences here and there to make sure it fits into the prompt for your school. So, to recap, make sure you're sharing a vivid, genuine story that is significant to you. Stories should show a growing awareness of self and your connection to the world. Clearly show how your struggles and or triumphs have shaped who you are, and stay within the word limit. So here is some links to some helpful resources for you. So from November 1st through the 10th, uh, myself and my colleague, Kayleen, from We Are Writing Lab faculty, we have committed appointment times to meet with freshmen applicants. So we'll work specifically with freshmen who are applying for admission as freshmen to colleges for next fall. These will be available through bookings. So we will have specific appointment times. There's two types of appointments you could make. You could have a 25-minute quick review because maybe you're a strong writer, you feel like your personal statement's pretty strong, you just want someone to look it over really quick and give you some big picture feedback. You can opt for that. That's like our 25-minute appointments. Or if you feel like, oh, you don't even know where to start, you need someone to help you brainstorm, or you just want a more in-depth review of your whole draft, those are the 50-minute appointments. So here's the link in bookings. Just a reminder, they're only available between November 1st through the 10th. However, anytime between now and November 16th, whenever your personal statements are due, you can bring your drafts in or come in for brainstorming sessions and work with one of our peer writing lab tutors. So we have a lot of um, peer tutors in the writing lab. Some have like many years of experience as tutors, and they can work with you on any part of your personal statement. Actually, any of your writing assignments too for classes. So here is a link to get into our writing lab team where you can post a message for help and then a tutor will meet you there. It's totally online right now. So our hours are 8 in the morning to 8 at night, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 3:30 on Fridays, and even Saturday, Sundays from 11 to 4. So there's no need to make an appointment. You can just drop in during any of our open hours. We also have the ability to you can also make an appointment with a writing lab tutor. They'll have some availability. So making appointments, just with the general writing lab tutors is also possible. There's a channel with the link to the bookings tab in our writing lab team. Here are some links to the University of Washington admissions, how to apply, the specific information about the required writing sections. And then they have a really cool video on tips for writing your personal statement. I thought it was quite good. Links for international students. Oops. Um, okay. And then some other additional web resources. So feel free to look through all of these. And um, again, remember that we are available for those additional personal statement feedback sessions from November 1st through the 10th. Okay, hope to see you there. Thank you for listening and watching this workshop.